Am I on the mic right now? You can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we could hear both of you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Through to Councillor Savage, are you present? Or I just can't see you. Okay, there you are. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. So first, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of this Nawas First Peoples. First, I'd like to move to adoption of the agenda. So I'll just make the motion that the July 21st, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Do we have a seconder to that? So second by Councillor Savage. Any discussion on the agenda? Councillor Gusselbrock.
Thank you. I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda, and that is to move item 12B, which is the appointment of our new Director of Financial Services. Move that up the agenda to immediately after item 8, public input.
Any additional items?
Yes, I had my hand up there to
Oh,
mention.
sorry. Yeah, sorry, Director Coates,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yes, there was additional items distributed. There was additional information for item 10D. It was a table on the COVID Recovery Fund summary. And for item 8, public comments regarding item 9A 167 and item 10D, access to beaches, and 10A, representation on the RDN board.
Sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to jockey my screen around a bit here, so I got multiple windows open. All right, so did council get all that? Any questions, concerns regarding those additional items on the agenda? And again, just we'll just vote on it then. And again, just moving the item that Councillor Gusselbrock indicated. And that's just the appointment of our new Director of Financial Services. Okay, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to 7 of our agenda, which is the consent agenda. So we have 3 items listed. I'll just make the motion that the recommendations listed for items 7A through 7C in the consent agenda be approved. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Gusselbrock. I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Takes us on to the next item, which is, you said after 8, right, Councillor Gusselbrock? After item 8, okay. So through to staff, do we have any members of the public listed for public input this evening?
No, we have not received any applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So that takes us on to item 12B of our agenda. So we have the appointment of the Director of Financial Services. I'll just make the motion that Raj Hayri, or I hope I pronounced that correctly, be appointed as the Director of Financial Services for the District of Lantzville. Do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Savage. Any comments? I'll just start it off anyways. I met our new Director of Financial Services last week. It was nice to meet him in person, and just welcome to the District of Lantzville, and look forward to working with you in the future. So I don't know if there's any other comments from council. I'll just open it to the floor. So Councillor Savage.
Yeah, the essence of this vote is we are currently without a Director of Finance, so we're simply approving a full-time one, which is a necessary cog for the district. And I too would like to welcome him to the district. Wish him luck. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any additional comments from council? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that moves us back on our agenda to under legislative matters. So we have under 9A bylaw number 167, the notice of intent to adopt a new business license bylaw number 167 and public input. So we have a motion on there. I'll just read the motion that the District of Lantzville business bylaw number 167 2021 be given third reading. Is there a seconder to that? So second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Discussion on the business license. So for myself, I'll reserve comment at this point through Councillor Gusselbrock as a seconder, and then I'll open it to the floor.
Yes, thank you. This bylaw was one of the strategic objectives that council considered when we were voted in this term. It's been a while in the making. There's, in my opinion, been a good amount of discussion on the various items. There's been some items and not everybody was happy with, but I think in general, council is behind this. We received a couple of letters today. I particularly note the letter we received from former Mayor Jack DeJong, who was concerned about our definition of business. He wanted a more restrictive definition to have some sort of financial bar. For example, the business would have to be earning over $30,000. I disagree with that. I think the intent of this bylaw is to find out and enumerate all the fine people who are carrying on businesses here in Lantzville, both home-based businesses as well as other businesses that may have an industrial or commercial base. I think that's important for the purpose of knowing who's there. There was a very fine article that went out with our monthly newsletter from the district explaining what the business bylaw was about. One reason, of course, is that our firemen will know that there's a business, and whether that business might have hazardous materials in case of a fire or other calamity to protect themselves. And I think that's a major point that we'll have. But secondly, that it's my hope that once we have the various businesses enumerated, that the district can advertise in the sense of having a registry so that people coming to Lantzville or people looking for businesses in this area would be able to contact them. It's also my firm hope that there will be a business association here in Lantzville in the not too distant future. In my opinion, that's an extremely important lobby voice within the community. Businesses can help us, can help council decide issues from their input. Other communities have the Chamber of Commerce, have business associations, and I think we've all seen that those are a valuable element of any community. So once again, this is a bylaw. Let's try it out. Let's get it running. I'm sure there'll be some wrinkles, and like any bylaw that we've passed, after some time has passed, maybe a year or whatever, staff can always come back to us and say, this isn't working, we want to change it, or there's something we want to add. I think that's the way most bylaws work. So I am, at this point, I am certainly in favor of this bylaw.
Okay, additional speakers regarding the reading of the business license bylaw. Okay, I have Councillor Savage.
Yes, I'm going to look at it through a lens that I usually do. And Business licensing is one of the economic development recommendations. It's supposed to benefit businesses and the community, but is this true? Can we expect a return on investment? I don't think so from what I'm seeing. No signs which advertise local businesses will be allowed on district property according to the new good neighbor bylaw, and this will be enforced in the business license application process. This may hurt some businesses. The zoning bylaw, no parking whatsoever will be allowed on district property for any home-based businesses. A business must provide parking on its own property. This will be enforced in the business license application process. Again, this may hurt some businesses. Next, the district states the following benefit through licensing. The district can collect important statistics about trends in the local economy to assist with policy decisions. Well, what about the trend of parking? When the planning department had the chance to listen to businesses, it didn't. It took away parking in the village streetscape. And now it's promoting to take away more parking from the village businesses in the phase 2 streetscape. And the zoning bylaw restricts parking and other aspects of home businesses. So this is doing the opposite of supporting business trends. I'm just looking at the evidence, and there's nothing to indicate this will be an advantage. Another benefit the district states is once detailed statistics are available, the district can use this information in grant applications for community economic funding. Well, I do this on a return of investment analysis, and we already got grant funding to hire an economic development officer, over $100,000, and funding for other economic development projects. And the return on this investment is nothing to date. So there's nothing to make me believe there's going to be a big return or any return from all this money that's being spent on this. So where is the benefit of more grants like this? So it seems we're facing, we're in a hurry to become like a city just for the sake of like a city doing city type things. And I've seen no proof or evidence or benefit myself for the business bylaw. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope at least some businesses will benefit from it, but I see far more harm upcoming than good. And once again, I have the same method I always do. You do things slowly and incrementally. Start it with a few volunteer businesses and prove it. And other businesses will follow that it's a good thing, a benefit. So I won't be supporting it for this reason. It seems to me another process where the money goes out, no money comes back in, and businesses can be hurt by it. So I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Additional speakers. Okay, hearing none, I'm likely going to call the question. So I'll call for a second time speakers, and I'm going to call for the question. Okay, seeing none, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed? Voting that Councillor Wilson, Councillor Savage are opposed. The motion carries. Okay, so that takes us on to bylaw number 200. I'll just simply make the motion that the District and Lantzville Good Neighbor bylaw number 200 2021 be adopted. Do we have a seconder to that? So seconded by Councillor Gusselbrecht. Just as Council is well aware, we are at adoption, so this is non-debatable. However, I will entertain a postponement motion. So I'm going to make that postponement motion that this motion be postponed until our September 22nd, 2021 council meeting. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to the reason to that. So we have Councillor Wilson. Okay, thank you. So the main reason why I'm proposing a postponement motion is simply because I had some communication with Councillor Edwards of the Sonawas First Nation Chief and Council, and at this point, I've been informed as a council they have not had the chance to, they have not been able to review and respond to the bylaw that's being proposed. And and from what I understand, there's been a lot going on, and they simply have not gotten to it, and they're moving into their summer break as we are. And even for them to have a look at this in the beginning of September, they likely would not be able to respond until the 22nd. So that's the reason for the postponement motion. I've given the date. I don't know if there's any further comment regarding that. So Councillor Gesselbach.
I don't understand why we're postponing this vote for the Sonawas First Nation to review. Do they have a veto?
So sorry, to review and respond to the proposed bylaw, as the proposed bylaw does speak to usage of the beach and regulation of the beach.
Okay, through the chair to staff, this bylaw has been on, we've been debating it for some time, and I know that at, I don't think it was our last meeting, but it was a meeting before that, that there was a motion to send it over. So have we received any response from the Sonawas First Nation?
Yes, through to staff through to council. On June 16th, council passed a motion to refer, to send a copy of the bylaw to the Sonawas Council for comment that was due June 29th, but unfortunately they could not respond by then. So we postponed putting it on the July agenda and put it onto the first July agenda, put it onto the second one. So no, we have not received any written comments. There were some comments that, you know, they were trying to schedule a meeting to review it, but nothing in writing. No.
Well, here's my problem. And with respect to Councillor Edwards, as well as the whole Sonawas Council, who I think have been doing a tremendous job, why would they be worried about the public beach in Lantzville? They are a high level of government. They are a sovereign nation. They are in the same status as Canada. We're just a municipality. We can't prohibit them from exercising their rights, both as residents of Canada or their Aboriginal rights to do whatever they want within the law on our beaches. So I don't understand why, if that's the excuse, why we can't adopt this bylaw tonight. They can always, we have meetings set up with the Sonawas Council on a quarterly basis, and I'm sure if there's problems, they can bring that up, but we can't restrict them. So why would they even be worried about this is an internal regulatory bylaw within Lantzville. It doesn't affect them. So I don't understand why we would want to postpone this adoption tonight.
Okay, so I have Councillor Wilson, you had your hand up.
I appreciate what Councillor Gesselbrecht is saying. At the same time, it's the summer. I don't really see it being a big deal to give them a little bit extra time. I think it's more just a courtesy to have, we've referred it to them for comment. And I recognize that their Aboriginal rights are such that our municipal bylaws can't restrict them from going to the beach, for example, during certain hours. But I don't see a big deal, just kind of putting this on the shelf till September 22nd as a courtesy to them for comment, and then we vote on it then. So I'm cool with that.
Any additional discussion? Initially, through to councillor, well, through to all of council, I was considering the 8th because I don't want to delay this necessarily any longer than anybody else. However, it just wouldn't give enough time as they'd likely be having their first meeting in that first week of September as well. So probably wouldn't give enough time for them to formalize a response and forward it on to our council. At this point, I've only spoken with Councillor Edwards. I don't have an official document with respect to what Chief and Council's ultimate, opinion on the matter is. And a lot of it has to do with being on the beach in groups of 4 or more after hours and not having basically bylaw called on them when they are exercising their Aboriginal rights. So anyways, I think for what it's worth, we have bylaws in place now. It's not like we're without bylaws. It's really about just postponing it to the 22nd. And at that point, yes, I would agree with Councillor Gesselbrecht. We move on and we adopt it, and then we wait for opinion, from Chief and Council. We're likely going to be having a meeting with Sanawa's Chief and Council on, I think it's October 8th. So Council, I think, is aware of that. And so anyways, I just think it's worth having some dialogue and having a formal response. So I see Director Coates, your hand is up.
Yes, and I realize that you're only debating at this point whether to postpone or not. But I did want to note that the motion that's on the floor is to adopt. And the bylaw currently reads that it would be shall come into effect on August 1st. So I guess I can find out what that means if you adopted it with that wording, or whether it would need to go back and have that amendment done.
Sure. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
After digesting the Good Neighbor bylaw and just kind of, there are a couple of things that I would like to change. So I don't know if this would be the time to I'm just not really familiar with the process, but can we move it back to third reading for the first meeting in September so that I can iron out a couple of things that I think that we need to revisit in the bylaw itself?
Well, I think right now you have a motion on the floor to postpone the motion to adopt to the 22nd. So you'd need to back out of this, back out of the motion to postpone, back out of the motion to give adoption, and then a motion to rescind third. Unless you're, you can propose changes. That doesn't mean the rest of council is going to make them. So that may be something you want to, council as a body wants to decide whether you're going to postpone third or not on September 8th. But you could, you could back out and then do a motion on the 8th to rescind if amendments are proposed.
I would like to do that. I appreciate we put a lot of work into this, but after sitting on a few of the things within the bylaw itself, that's where I'm at. So I guess I just don't know how the process to make that happen, but if we could on the 8th for the first meeting, I would like that.
Staff, it would be helpful if these comments could be submitted to us so that we can, I don't know if it's going to require some new wording amendments to put forward. Otherwise, you could be looking at October, November, December before this bylaw is going to get through the process. If you can't simply, rescind third and then give it third reading as amended unless it's a very basic amendment. So you would need to, give staff some time to prepare some wording.
Sure.
Okay, Councillor Gesselbrecht.
I move that we postpone this to September 22nd. And
Councillor Gesselbrecht, there's already a motion on the floor to postpone. adoption to the 22nd, so we'd have to dispose of that before making any further motions.
Well, okay, that's fine. That would, I say we simply do that. And if Councillor Wilson has a wish list, he heard what Director Coates said, he can provide it in writing so that all of us have a chance to see what's on his mind.
I'll do that in the next week or so, so you guys can sit on it over the summer. It's not much. So how do we dispose of, Mayor Swain, how do we dispose of your first motion there?
So if you simply just vote on it, and then basically a motion on the floor is postponed until the 22nd of September. It's that simple.
Okay.
If you want to make amendments, as Director Coates has already indicated, then we would have to rescind third reading.
Okay.
But we can do that on the 22nd. I would suspect, and just through the council, I would suspect that, there is a strong likelihood that there may be requested changes coming from Sonalis, but essentially we'll have to wait until they completed their review and they have their official position ready to present to us via some kind of written method. So email, letter, whatever it's going to be. So, all right. So unless there's anything further regarding postponement, I will call the question. I'm not seeing anything. So all those in favor of the postponement motion? Okay. And,
I'm confused, sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
So now we're still postponing it, but we can still make changes to it?
You can still.
What will happen? Your motion to postpone is to postpone the motion that's on the floor to adopt the bylaw. So either you can back out of adopting now, or you can back out of adopting on the 8th, or you can back out of adopting on the 22nd. But each week that you push it back, it's more of a time delay for us to be in a position where you can consider any amendments.
Yeah. So through to Councillor Wilson, and to the rest of the council, I think, we have a couple options. We just move ahead and postpone it now to the 22nd, or we can just simply vote it down tonight and then rescind third reading tonight, and then it's open and it will still achieve the same result. And then it will put council in a position where we can propose amendments to be considered on the 22nd.
Let's just do that.
So for clarity,
that's what
that's
I'd recommend.
defeating the postponement and,
and
then withdrawing the motion to adopt.
Yes. So I will, so again, my recommendation now, we do have the postponement motion as moved and seconded, is to vote that down. That kills it. And then we move to voting down the adoption, and then we move to rescinding third reading. So we have to do it three.
Sorry, it would be clearer if you don't defeat your bylaw. If you defeat the bylaw is gone.
Oh. Okay,
so you would want to withdraw your motion to adopt.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to call the question on the postponement motion. Let's just do that. All those in favor. So just Councillor Gusselbrecht's in favor of postponing, and opposed. So noting Mayor Swain's opposed, Councillor Proctor, Councillor Savage, Councillor Wilson opposed. So the postponement motion is defeated. Now we're, as Director Coates has indicated, we don't want to vote third reading. So down. So what was the suggestion, Director Coates? Just
to withdraw the adoption.
Yeah. So, okay. So,
What did he say?
So just
withdraw the motion to adopt. There's a motion on the floor that the bylaw be adopted, and council can unanimously consent to withdraw the motion.
So by unanimous consent, just a show of hand to withdraw the motion on the floor. And opposed. So Councillor Gusselbrecht's opposed to that. So so we need to officially vote on it then. So I'm going to call the question on withdrawing the motion from the floor. So Councillor Gusselbrecht, did you have a question?
No, I do have a question.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time going through these bylaws, and now at the last minute, after we've had third reading, to want to revisit all this, it's a waste of time. I'm sorry. And, this is why councillors have to pay attention and respect to Councillor Wilson. I realize there might be something, but It's got to be done way ahead of time before you even get to third reading. This is, the horse has already left the barn, in my opinion. So no, I'm not in favor.
So I'm going to call the question on withdrawal of that third reading motion. So all those in favor and opposed, Councillor Gusselbrecht's opposed, that motion to withdraw carries. So now we're back to rescinding third reading of bylaw number, just make sure I got it right, 200/2021. So I'll make the motion to rescind. Do we have a seconder? So seconded by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on rescinding third reading. I feel like we've had discussion, but if there's anything additional to add. Okay, I will call the question on rescinding third reading. All those in favor and opposed? When Councillor Gusselbrecht's opposed, the motion carries. Okay. So
And then if we could ask for a motion to direct staff of when to place this on an agenda again, if you would like it on the 8th
okay.
for consideration of amendments, or did you want to wait till the 22nd?
On the 8th.
Okay, so Councillor Wilson suggesting the 8th. Are you making that motion, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Gusselbrecht. Any discussion on that? And this is just moving third reading to the 8th. Okay. Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Again, that's carried unanimously. All right. Moving on, we're on to item 9C. So we have the Union of BC Municipalities Community to Community Forum Program Funding Grant application for events between September 27, 2021 and March 31st, 2021. And there's a recommendation there regarding the Sinawas and District of Lantzville Joint Working Group. And I'll read the motion that the District of Lantzville and Sinawas First Nation submit to the Union of BC Municipalities a joint application by September 10th, 2021 for community to community forum program funding for events between September 27, 2021 and March 31st, 2022. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on this item. Okay, as a mover, I'm good. Councillor Proctor, did you have anything as a seconder? Councillor Savage.
Thank you. We already meet regularly with Sinawas on a council-to-council basis. And on top of that, we just signed an MOU so we can consult each other more. Sinawas kids go to Seaview School and have many Lantzville friends. Our two communities have been interwoven for a long time and already get along. So what I need to hear, please, is what exactly is this grant for? I don't like spending money, whether it's grant or not, just for the sake of spending it. So what exactly are we aiming at for Lantzville here specifically with up to $5,000, please? Thank you.
Okay, so that I see Director Coates, your hand is up if you want to comment.
Yes, so it was discussed briefly at the joint working group meeting, and that's where this recommendation came from. So it came from that process. Council may not be aware, but when we've held meetings with the Snaunoas Council, we have been using funding from a previous community forum funding process, and we've expended those funds fully now with the last MOU signing and the purchase of the carving, things like that. So we did talk about there's an extensive list within the grant program of what we could include and what we cannot include. And so the proposal was that I would be meeting with the staff representative from the Snaunoas to finalize the grant application. And it was suggested to us that our joint working group meetings and the joint council meetings could be funded through this program. So one of the suggestions was that there's been talk for some time about doing site visits to see their, I can't remember if it's their sewer facility or their water facility, something we were invited to do. And so there's discussion about renting a bus or something like that to facilitate that for the first meeting in October. Just for clarity, it's a 100% grant funding program through UBCM. And we have a deadline for application.
There are two mics, pardon me,
Yeah,
point of interest. Councillor Savage has his mic open, as does Mayor Swain, but I'm getting feedback. Thank you.
I think we had Councillor Wilson, Councillor Savage. I typically keep mine open just so I can try to be more timely with my responses. But I think it's Director Coates here. Sometimes with your audio, it's a bit, I don't know, crackly or
I
feedback.
get feedback at this end too. It's better now. I'm not getting it now.
Okay.
But
there
I
you
was getting crackling, so, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers the question, but certainly it will be funds well used. Both parties, we alternate hosting, so both parties will be able to use it for funding for the dinners or lunches or whatever is required for the meetings.
All right, thank you. Now it's clear as a bell. That's the one thing I did not know. So I'll fully support it then. So it sounds like what this grant is going to be for is our ongoing work with Snanawas. That's the key to it. So now I know what I didn't know before, so I'll fully support it. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments, questions, debate on this? Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, it's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to item 10A under unfinished business. So we have a motion on the floor regarding representation of the Regional District Nanaimo Board. And this was postponed from the January 27, 2021 regular council meeting. So no mover or seconder required. There's a motion on the floor. So through to council. What is council's will? So Councillor Wilson. Mute.
For myself, and I'm not sure what other council members, but for myself at this time, I will not be able to, just from a time perspective, take on that responsibility at that time. I'm not sure what any other council members, but for me, I would have to, I mean, as much as I would love the experience to be able to do it, I just, and the chance to do it, I just don't have the time at this present time.
Councillor Proctor.
I can certainly appreciate what Councillor Wilson is saying. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that we appoint Councillor Will Gesselbrock as the District of Lantzville Municipal Director on the RDN.
Is there a seconder to that? Okay, second by Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, if we could just get clarity, there is a motion on the floor. So the amendment needs to be worded in the way of that council amends the motion on the floor by striking
By striking
Councillor Jamie Wilson and inserting,
Councillor Gesselbrock.
and then you would need to do the same for the second clause. Otherwise, you would have Councillor Gesselbrecht as the representative and as the alternate. So for the second part of you would need to put a name in there for the second part.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Gesselbrock.
I suggest we amend that section by substituting Councillor Proctor for Councillor Gesselbrock.
Okay. So there's the two suggestions. So we have that moved by Councillor Proctor, if you're okay with the second part. And then it was seconded by Councillor Wilson. So as long as Councillor Wilson's okay with the second part, we'll just move forward with that. Okay, discussion on motions. So that was Councillor Proctor's amendment. So go ahead, Councillor Proctor.
I think that this is an opportunity for other people on council to have a chance at being the RDN rep. And I think that having a well-rounded council that has lots of different opportunities is in our best interest.
Okay, and through to Councillor Wilson as a seconder.
I just seconded it really for discussion, but I concur with Councillor Proctor, and it's the same thing that I said way back when in January. I think it's good for all members of council to experience various committees and boards, and yeah, in the case of Councillor Gesselbrecht, He has been, he was on the previous council, he's on this council. As far as myself, I think I've only missed 3 meetings in 3 years. But at this point, I just wouldn't, I wouldn't want to take on that extra commitment. So I feel like I can support this motion.
Okay, and through the rest of the council. Okay, if you don't mind, Councillor Savage, I was going to speak first, and then if you want to speak after, is that okay? Since it has to do with my removal. So through the council, I was hoping since January that this council has given serious consideration to removing me as the RDN representative for basically the community that we all represent. During the election, I had received several emails discouraging me from running for mayor, including being their regional district and Nanaimo representative, as that typically comes in part with taking on that role or responsibility as being mayor. Since being elected, I have proven them wrong, and mostly, for the most part, further affirmed to many others that I am the right person for this job. I have most definitely elevated Lantzville's status at the RDN boardroom table. I've been doing an excellent job making Lantzville's taxpayers ensuring that they are considered at the boardroom table. I am a well-respected board member, and I've worked very hard on basically establishing good relationships with both board members and staff members. In 2021, I've been appointed to the executive committee, as well as being appointed as the chair to the Transit Redevelopment Subcommittee. In May of this year, I presented an overview of our strategic priorities at the RDN meeting at the municipalities, which was well received. Moving forward, it is my hope that council will allow me to continue to work on council's behalf as well as the residents of Lantzville's behalf, so I can continue to keep us in good standing with the board and represent our Lantzville residents. So I will not be supporting this motion. The one thing we have to consider with respect to this motion that's before us is it doesn't guarantee, if anything, any of the subcommittee appointments or committee appointments will stand. And that's something this council needs to seriously consider. Being elected to the RDN board is not necessarily about taking turns. At this point, I haven't heard from any member of council whether or not they're considering running in the next election. But typically, with respect to the RDN board, the orientation for that occurs after the election. All board members are orientated to the board. There's no guarantee as well that all board members are going to be there next term, as that will be subject to the actual election itself. So this is something we have to seriously consider, because ultimately, with respect to the transit, which I've heavily advocated for, we have motions of our council that have gone to the RDN board for consideration. It puts us in a decreased position or a weaker position to try and realize some of those in terms of moving forward. With respect to being on the RDN executive committee, which I was recently pointed to, this just doesn't come out of thin air. It's because I'm a well-respected board member, and my opinion at the board level is well respected. It's a small committee. It deals with process and governance, including CAA recruitment, or CAO, sorry, recruitment. But ultimately, these appointments just don't come from just being a lump on the log and sitting at the boardroom table. It comes from active participation, respectful participation, and ultimately earning the trust of the board members. So I strongly oppose this motion. I don't believe at this point in our term it's about taking turns. If it is about taking turns, then what we would be likely doing is every member of this council would sit on there for 3 months at a time for the remaining portion of this term. We have a year to go. We have some things that we have, I've tried to increase momentum on with respect to my term so far. They are slowly coming to fruition. So it would be a real shame to lose out on that. I'll save it at that for now, but through to, I guess, other members of council. So I have Councillor Savage, and then we'll move forward.
Yes, I certainly won't be supporting this. This excuse being offered as to why to fire Mayor Swain does not hold water whatsoever. If you're looking to take turns, you do that in the first year. You don't wait till the third year to replace him after the good work he's done, the connections he's made, the way the RDN works. And I've served on it for 3 years, the same as Mayor Swain has, and I well know how it works. It works as the more you network and the better relationships you build with fellow directors, the more influence one can have with RDN decisions. And Mayor Swain has worked his way into chairing the transit subcommittee, sits on the ICE-T committee. It's absolutely pointless and a big disadvantage to remove him now and to start from scratch with basically a rookie, you could say. No one that's ever done it before. What are you possibly going to accomplish in 12 months that nowhere near as much as Mayor Swain's going to accomplish? This is pure selfishness and not for the benefit of the community. If this was purely for the community, we keep our best person in there. I've got lots of experience on the RDN board, and not once have I suggested, oh, how about I take a turn on the RDN board? When someone's doing a great job, I've chatted with these people. I was the only one on council, along with Mayor Swain, that met a Zoom meeting not too long ago with municipalities and with fellow directors, and we hashed over a lot of issues and chatted. And Mayor Swain, believe me, is respected on the board. It makes no sense whatsoever to replace him now. There's zero advantage to it. So just to say, oh, we'd like a turn, that's not a reason at all. And if you want a turn, then we each take 3 months on the board. And since I've had so much experience on it, why not? But just to remove him and replace it with one person, why? I'm hearing zero reason whatsoever. And it's hurting the community, not helping the community. And I want to see independent voting on this. I don't want to see any lockstepping vote, like, oh, we're a team, we're going to all vote together. Councillor Gesselbrack or Councillor Proctor wants it, so we're going to support them, period. I want to see independent thinking on this. And believe me, this is not good for the community. This is sheer selfishness, thinking of oneself and not what's best for the community or the RDN board.
Yeah. All right, and just as a point of clarification through to Councillor Savage, the ICE-T, or I sit on the regional advisory committee for ICE-T, and that has nothing to do with the RDN appointment. But again, that's something I've managed to move into the chairing position on. Anyways, through the rest of the I saw Director Coates. You've left my screen, but you had the yellow hand was up.
I was going to add the same clarification that you just added, that it's totally separate, your representation on ICE-T. That's an honor bestowed upon mayors on the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional speakers. So I saw Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Gesselbrack.
More a question for Councillor Gesselbrack. I mean, Councillor Gesselbrack, I mean, one, do you have the willingness to participate in some of the subcommittees that's on the RDN? Just out of curiosity, just a question to you.
If I'm elected, certainly. That's part of the duties. I've never characterized my public service as being a lump on a log. I won't respond to Councillor Savage's insults. I think they're childish. When we vote democratically. We don't vote as a bloc. I know there's that chatter going on Councillor Savage's website that there's some 3-person cabal going on. It's called democracy. and we have different opinions. It may be a 3-2 vote, might be a 4-1 vote, but it's the democratic way of doing it. No one here has said that Mayor Swain has not done a good job. I think if this motion passes, this will give Mayor Swain the opportunity to pursue some of the other initiatives that he started. For example, the safety committee. There's lots to do there. He will have more time to do that. Another initiative is getting water to the at least 2 other communities in Lantzville that need water. A lot of work can be done there between the developers and the residents, meetings. I think Mayor Swain is more than competent at doing that. And it's once again, a strategic priority of council. I have served on many boards. I have contributed. I believe I have a good relationship with probably more than half of the current RDN members. And yes, I follow the issues very closely: solid waste management, recreation, just to name 2 of the various initiatives that the RDN is carrying on. I feel more than confident that I'll be able to adequately represent the residents of Lantzville. That's what I'm doing now. That's what I will do on the RDN board.
Okay, I just had a couple of follow-up comments. With respect to being on RDN currently as a representative for Lantzville, it's the interesting thing there is in Lantzville, it is typically being the mayor, and with the member municipalities, the mayor is also being typically the individual that sits on the board. The one thing is when you are elected mayor, you're expected to reflect and carry out the will of council. Essentially, you're the official spokesperson for the municipality. So it's just in that alone, I believe the best person to be sitting in that chair is the mayor. With respect to continuing on, no one's actually asked me, would you like to continue, Mayor Swain? And my answer to that is a strong yes. In terms of doing more work with the safety committee and bringing water to residents, that's a responsibility of our entire council. I've shown the leadership to our council by bringing forward the safety committee. And on top of that, with respect to even where they're advancing our relationship with the Snows First Nations and bringing us forward to an MOU. That is through the leadership of your mayor and our council following through on that. That's how we arrived there. We have other things that will require the same thing, but ultimately in terms of the RDN, there are a number of initiatives that I would like to see through. And I believe I'm the best individual for that. I have plenty of time. I've made the time. When I was elected to be mayor, that was one of my commitments is to fulfill, is making the time. So I think we're in a real sad position here. My initial thought with this motion, or with the motion that we had on the floor at the beginning of this discussion, was just to postpone it indefinitely. And that's what I would suggest we do with this. But it's really up to council. I think this is a real sour note for our council. You have a mayor that's willing, able, and capable of seeing this through with respect to the RDN board, but you're cutting me off at the knees. Councillor Gusberg, I see your hand was up.
Thank you. There is no mandate in either the Local Government Act nor in the Community Charter, which says that the mayor of a municipality is to sit on a regional district board. There's nothing there. We actually have a precedent in this community that the last council another council person was voted to take to represent Lantzville. And as I recall, Mayor Swain, you voted in favor of that. And from what I heard from the sitting council members of the RDN in the last council, that Mr. Colclough did an admirable job and was extremely well respected, although he came in midway through the term. So I appreciate the fact that you're ready, willing, and able, but I think you enunciated the most important principle, the will of council. It doesn't matter who brings a motion, whether it's for a safety committee or whether it's for other initiatives. We are equals. And it doesn't matter who voted for, who voted against. It's the will of council at the end of the day. And if this vote passes today, it will be the will of council and we'll all move on. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments from council? Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, Mayor Hain was the RDN director for many terms. It was just one term where he was removed, and according to council, there was a reason for it. There's no reason whatsoever with Mayor Swain being removed. So the precedent doesn't count. And in terms of making disparaging comments about me using the word immature, I can back up what I say with deadly accurate data. And is that what you're going to be doing on the RDN board? Is point of ordering and calling names to people?
Councillor Savage, just enough with that, please.
So anyway, I can back up with what I said in terms of the voting record with data, and it was 96.6%.
Okay, Councillor Savage, this is no
you three voted together.
Councillor Savage, only a point of order. The point of order is that this is not germane to the motion.
Well, forgive me if I may explain my point, and why this will get a vote is it's three people voting together. And George Cuff.
Okay, again, I'm point of order on that, Councillor Savage. We can't presume that three members of council are voting together on this item.
Right, very good. I certainly hope not. And that's why I brought up this should be brought up independently. It's as far as I'm concerned, if we have a mayor that's highly respected in our community and popular, and he's doing an exemplary job at the RDN board with feedback I've got directly, then there is zero reason to remove him at the end of the third year. This is not halfway through. This isn't rotating. This isn't any principle whatsoever. It's simply a gratuitous move. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to fully support Mayor Swain. There's zero reason not to. I haven't heard one reason, one advantage, one benefit to Lantzville of replacing him. And since I've heard none of those advantages or benefits, then I'm going to be supporting Mayor Swain. And I also will be supporting the community, who I guarantee you, if a poll was taken, he'd be overwhelmingly supportive to continue on. Thank you.
Okay, I just had a couple of additional remarks. Yes, with respect to the former or the last term, Councillor Gusselbrecht is correct. I did vote in favor of removing at that time Mayor Hain from the RDN board. My reasons for that, I had arrived at on my own, and it was in relation to something that had happened in that term with respect to comments being made. There was a press release done, and that's why. In some regards, I regret that decision because I don't know if it was necessarily made in the best interest of the community, but live and learn. That's, I guess, the way I look at it. With respect to the community charter, Councillor Gusbrecht is very correct. There's nothing in the community charter that stipulates that the mayor must sit as the chair, or sorry, as a representative to any of the regional district boards. However, the community charter does state that the mayor must provide leadership to council, including recommending bylaws, resolutions, and other measures that may assist in the peace, order, and good governance of the municipality. It doesn't state that for councillors. you know, it's that in itself, you know, in terms of being the head of council, that again makes likely the mayor of the day the best candidate for that position. Again, I've advanced a few things forward now in my term thus far, and again, I've been selected to be appointed to additional committees. I have a track record, and again, this feels to me very much like cutting me off at the knees, not promoting our community, but again, creating to council dysfunction. I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of left a little bit speechless. I'm surprised this continues to keep going on. But again, I think we'll just move to unless there's any additional information, move to the vote. And again, I was going to call for postponement, but I think we put it to a vote and be done with this. So unless there's any additional information, I'm going to call the question. And again, voting in favor means that you are now moving Councillor Gesselbrecht as the RDN director and Councillor Proctor as the alternate. So,
Yes, for clarity, it's the amendment motion you'd be voting on.
yeah, this amendment motion, and we go back to the main motion as amended. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, opposed, noting Mayor Swain, Councillor Savage is Councillor Savage is opposed. Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there any further additional debate on that? Again, you know, for myself, I'm actually very disappointed that it's come to this. I can't say I'm willing, able, and capable, and I have a proven track record, and you are now removing me. Again, extremely disappointed. But I will go ahead and call the question on the main motion as amended. So again, voting in favor of Councillor Gesselbrecht as the director and Councillor Proctor as alternate director. All those in favor? Opposed, noting Mayor Swain, Councillor Savage opposed. The motion carries. All right, that takes us on to item 10B of our agenda. So we have the actually, sorry, I'm going to call for a reconsideration on that. So under, I just got to find it here. Yes, under section 132 of the community charter, I'm going to call for a reconsideration on the motion just passed. And so it doesn't require any vote of council, and I would like to propose an amendment to that. The last motion did not really speak to time or date, I don't believe. I'm just trying to find it. Just give me a sec.
Or do you mean time and date of when the appointment would take
Yes.
effect? It takes effect on the date adopted.
Well, I posted, yeah. So my amendment to the motion would be, sorry, it's not reconsideration. It would be as a follow-up motion. Actually, I don't know how to necessarily do it, Director Coates. You can correct me if I'm wrong. It just speaks to time and date. So I was going to add a date to it effective as of November 15th of 2021. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to that. Okay, Councillor Savage is seconding. Now, Director Coates, I don't want to make this motion out of order. So really, I'm just reconsidering the last motion as it was amended. And then I'm just further amending it.
So the motion that was adopted by council
Yes,
was as presented, just with the two names changed. It would
Yeah.
take effect on the day the motion's adopted.
okay.
So it doesn't require an effective date, if that's
Yeah,
what
so I
you
was,
want.
yeah, so through to Director Coates, and further that, the effective date is November 15th of 2021. Okay, so is that a seconder, Councillor Gesselbrecht, or a question? Okay, do I have a seconder to the amendment? So Councillor Savage and Director Coates, is that correct?
I'm still at a loss. I think you've called for a reconsideration, so you'd be voting on the same motion. And now you've made a motion to amend it.
Yes.
And the motion to amend is that the motion on the floor be amended by adding a clause. And further that the appointments take effect November 15th,
That's correct.
2021.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Okay, what's your point of order, Councillor Kesselbrock?
Which motion are you putting forward? If it's a reconsideration, it's simply a reconsideration of the previous vote. If it's to add an amendment to the previous motion, that's a late motion at this point. And it would,
It's a
you would
late
have to
motion.
ask for a vote. You'd have to ask for a vote of council whether we're going to consider a late motion at this point in the proceedings.
Okay, Councillor Kesselbrock, I don't believe what I'm proposing is out of order. Pursuant again to section 131 of the community charter, I can bring forward this motion for reconsideration. As part of that reconsideration, it would not be out of order to further amend it. And I'll refer to our parliamentarian, and that's Director Coates, to ensure that what I'm calling is not out of order.
So I am looking at the procedure bylaw. It does quote the community charter. It says without limiting the authority of the council to reconsider a matter, the mayor may require the council to reconsider and vote again on a matter that was the subject of a vote. So you have called for reconsideration on that vote. I acknowledge that normally the vote would be the exact same motion. However, it's council's motion. If you wish to consider an amendment of it, it's council's motion on the floor.
So the motion's on the floor. So that it's been moved and seconded that an additional clause be put in there that basically effective date of the new appointments would be November 15th, 2021. Okay, so speaking to them, and now the second by Councillor Savage, speaking to the amendment, again, I'll keep this brief. Basically, this would allow enough time for me to complete the work that's required on the Transit Redevelopment Committee. And that is it. And if it's not done by then, which it should be done, then I'm fine with the date of November 15th. That being having it. And at that point, it may even allow for some transition time as well. Because at this point, like I mentioned in my original debate, typically with being orientated to the RDN board, that's typically done at the beginning of the term when the newly elected board is present. There may be some returnings, but a lot of new members of the RDN board, but ultimately that's when orientation would occur. So there would have to be an orientation lead up to then. So that's the rationale for the amendment. Through to the seconder, if there's anything, and then to the rest of the council, and then I will call the question on the amendment.
Yes, as well as that reason, it's just simple common courtesy. You can give someone notice that's been working at this for 3 years to tie up affairs and so on. To blindside someone totally out of the blue is, for my money, completely unacceptable and ain't the way to do things. It's actually, I would phrase it as disgraceful. So here we have an opportunity to give this person time to finish up their affairs. And what is it met with? A point of order, so that trying to prevent them from even presenting the idea. So this to me is just typical, and I'll certainly be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gelsenbrock.
What's typical, Councillor Savage, is you don't understand parliamentary procedure. My point of order was echoed by the director of Director Coates, that there seemed to be 2 motions on the floor, and I was confused which one it was. And if there was a second one, I stated my reason. The mayor ruled on that, and we all move on. That's called parliamentary procedure. Now, my question to the mayor is, how many people are on the transit committee with you?
On the subcommittee, it's a 6-member committee, and I'm the chair of that committee.
And the subcommittee,
There's a 5, sorry, it might be 5 or 6. Anyways, go ahead.
and the subcommittee makes recommendations to the RDN board at large. Has a timetable been set for your subcommittee to actually make recommendations to the RDN board at large?
There has been basically, there's a timeline, and I believe by the November 15th that would be fulfilled. The purpose of that subcommittee would be fulfilled. And just as a point of clarification, the subcommittee basically provides recommendations to the transit select committee, the transit select committee, which then provides recommendations to the board.
All right, and I take it there's minutes that are kept for each subcommittee meeting, which set out what the position of the various subcommittee members are, as well as any recommendations that might be made.
Well, there are meeting minutes for every meeting that's conducted.
So there's no reason why I, as your substitute, wouldn't be able to review those minutes. Obviously, I would have to talk to Tyler Brown, who's the chairman now of the RDN board. I may want to be on that committee as well. I'd certainly like to see your good efforts carried through, and I'm sure the RDN board could accommodate me on that. So I don't think anybody has blindsided you. This motion came on in January. We tabled it for this meeting specifically. So it was always on the table that there was going to be a vote today whether to remove you as the RDN representative. So I can't support putting this off to November the 15th. I'm sure I'm more than capable of stepping in, reviewing what you've done, and if it's appropriate for this community as well as for the RDN as a whole, I see no reason why I wouldn't support it.
Just as a point of clarification, there's no guarantee that any of the appointments to any of the committees that I sit on will be fulfilled by my replacement, just to make that perfectly clear. So they will have to find a new chair to the transit redevelopment subcommittee. So they will have to find a new chair for that. And then ultimately with any of the other committees I sit on, there's no guarantee that my replacement will be sitting on those committees. What you have to understand is there is other board members that are sitting in line potentially to take those committee postings. So it's, it's the call of or the will of this council. The other thing I find interesting is, we're moving into the month off. So it's like you're giving yourself a month's pay for doing absolutely nothing. Moving forward into the committee into the appointment itself. So anyways, it's the will of this council, clearly. All I'm asking for is a little courtesy to finish off the work I've done and then pass the baton, so to speak, to the next individual. It's going to be doing that, and it'll be you, Councillor Gesselbrecht. So, again, I'm just asking for a little courtesy here, and again, it's to the will of council. So again, the effective date would be November 15th, 2021. I think that's very reasonable. It still gives a full year. Really, it's all we're really talking about is 2 months and change. But again, it would be the least disruptive to the board. And out of respect to the board, I have to strongly advocate for that, because I find this whole move is going to be disruptive to the board, bringing a bit of a dark cloud over Lantzville. And yeah, it is a bit of a blind side, if you must know. So I'm gonna, unless there's new information, I'm just gonna call the question. So Councillor Wilson, you have new information or debate, or
well, the first thing I do want to make reference to the blindsiding and the cutting off the knees. This has been on the agenda since January. And what I said at that time was, I thought that first off, I didn't know that there was pay for the break. Like, I didn't know you got paid for the break. So I guess that's important to you, but we I thought I'd postponed or position this motion at this time because it just made sense for there to be a transition when there's a summer break. I don't know if the RDN even breaks in the summer or if there's meetings or not. So yeah, to hear the terms blindsiding and cutting off the knees, I just strongly disagree with those comments. This has been on there since January. We knew that this was going to be discussed at this time.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion. That's fair. In terms of the summer break, it reflects all the municipalities. That's just the way it works. Councilor,
there's actually pay for the break.
Pardon me?
There's pay for the.
Just like we get paid for our break, there's remuneration for the end position as well.
Okay.
So I just saw your hand up, and I did have a comment about the blindside piece. But go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I haven't heard not one benefit, not one reason given for turning down this amendment, nor have I heard even one benefit, one reason given for replacing you in the main motion. That's what I call the lowest of low standard debates. And it's exactly how I called it. I'm usually deadly accurate. 96.6% voting block 2020, period.
Hey, Councillor Savage, I'm going to call a point of order on that. Again, it's digressing from what we're discussing. There's no point in bringing up voting records. Yeah, in closing, it's the interesting thing about this, the RDN appointment, and I hope it will eventually get to this place, is that in the future, this is just an elected position, period. So you'd have, and this is being discussed, I believe it through ABICC as well as UBCM, is moving to a system, and even in municipalities, your RDN director is essentially an elected position. So when you run an election, you either run for mayor or council or RDN director. And it's not through the various council, or it's not an appointment of council. I think that's the best way of doing it. But again, and then in terms of the cutting off knees blindside comment, I honestly didn't think council would go through with this. So, it does feel a bit like a blindside, but more or less a real slap in the face. But that's just my opinion, and that's how I feel. So. And that's it. So I'm going to move to calling a question. So again, what we're voting on is the amendment is just postponing, or not postponing, but it has to do with, again, enacting the appointments as of November 15th. So call the question on amendment. All those in favor? And noting Mayor Swain, and opposed. So Councillor Wilson, Councillor Gesbrecht, Councillor Proctor opposed. The amendment fails. Back to the main motion as amended, it's not amended, just back to the main motion. So just voting on the reconsideration. Again, we're just voting now on the appointment of Councillor Proctor and Gesselbrecht. So all those in favor and opposed, noting Mayor Swain's opposed, Councillor Savage is opposed, and the motion carries. All right, so moving along, we're on to item 10B of our agenda. So this is the Harper Road Beach access. So this is a postponed motion from the June 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting. Motion's on the floor. I'll just read it. So that the Vancouver Island University Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region Research Institute concept design for Harper Beach Road and be revised into the Harper Road Schedule A design and work be attached to the June 2nd regular council meeting agenda. So that's the motion that's on the floor. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Savage.
Yes, I move we postpone this, please, till 2023.
Okay, I'll second that postponement motion. And then again, just speaking to the postponement, the reason why, without getting into the subject matter. So go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I just think the timing will be better to be organized, do this in 2023. That's just a little over a year. So I think we have more important matters to go over in the meantime, especially the water situation and the winds in Clark Drive. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments? As the seconder, I'll forgo my turn at this point. Okay, hearing none, I will move to calling the question on postponement. So all those in favor and opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to item C. So this is the Lavender Road beach access. So there was a motion to postpone as of the June 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting, and I'm not going to read the motions on this one. So through to council, what is your will? Sorry, I dropped my pen. Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, I move that we postpone this till 2023. Thank you.
I'll second that for a discussion for the reason why we would want to postpone it. So through to you, Councillor Savage, is there a reason why?
Yes, the same reason as for Harper. I think we've got other more important things to tackle in our last year. And as well, we have that piece of district land now that can be done anything to it on a staff level. So it is district property. So I think it's best we leave other refinements till 2023. Thank you.
And through to additional, okay, Councillor Gusbert, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, some hard work was done by the students up at VIU on this with the design. Personally, I wasn't 100% in favor of the design. I think there's an ongoing debate in Lantzville about the beach ends. Certain ones need to be tidied up a bit in terms of parking. I think Lavender Road, that hedge could be taken out, some trees put in, some picnic tables, and it would be just fine. But I too am not opposed to deferring this to a later date and get some more advice from the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments from council? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question and Director Coates, if you don't mind just reading back the postponement motion, please. I think it was 2023, is that?
Yes, that was moved and seconded that council postpones the motion on the floor to 2023.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, again, for myself, I can support this. It doesn't mean that this topic can't be brought back in the meantime, but just as the motion as presented, basically it'd be postponed until 2023. So I'm fine with that at this point. So unless there's any additional comments, questions from council, I will call the question. Okay, all those in favor and opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to item D, which is the access to beaches. So again, we have a motion on the floor, and this is from the July 7th regular council meeting. No mover or seconder required. There's 3 motions there. This is Councillor Gusselbrecht's, I believe. So is there any, I'll just through to council. Well, there's 3 parts to it. So
As a point of order, please.
And what's your point of order, Councillor?
May I please call division on the 3 parts of the question? They really are quite distinct. Thank you.
Okay, Director Coates, I see your hand up. I'm just trying to figure this one out, but go ahead, Councillor or Director Coates.
Yes, the procedure bylaw does identify that if each section is distinct unto itself, that it could be called for separate votes.
Do we need?
I guess it depends on how closely council wishes to define that, because if you start with the word number 3, remove all encroaching hedges, like the words that staff would need to be added in front of each of those clauses.
Yeah. Okay. So through to Councillor Savage, we can move to dividing the motion, or division of the motion, but I'm just struggling with this one. But through the Director Coates, do we need a majority vote of council to do such, or can it just be automatic as a request of one individual member of council?
It's automatic by request of a member of council if they are distinct sections.
Yeah.
Usually that means it starts with that, and the next clause starts with and further that, and they're complete thoughts. So right now, the way this one's crafted,
Yeah.
like number 1, number 2, and number 3 don't stand alone without adding something in front of it. But, as council, I think the procedures and the rules within the bylaw are put there by council to facilitate your meetings and moving the business along. It's always up to council if you wish to, in a sense, small way, suspend the rule and allow it, and staff would simply show it as that staff remove all, or that staff increase available, that staff remove all encroaching, so that they make complete thoughts. They wouldn't make complete thoughts if they were just split.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. So I see, I got to deal with the motion of order, or point of order first. So I think we'll move to dividing the 3 motions that are there, or the work list, and then we can kind of work through that. So Councillor Gusselbreck, I see your hand was up.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Savage. I believe grammatically that it does state, it starts off that staff does 1, 2, or 3. So I don't think we need to add that word, that staff each time. I'd like to deal with number 3 because in my view, that's the safety issue. So dealing with 3, which is removing all encroaching hedges, bushes, and tree branches, impeding the line of sight for vehicles exiting Orr, Myron, Lavender, and Jacks Road onto Dickinson Road.
So are you moving that, or is that just
Yes.
you want to discuss? So
Well, I'm moving that.
So, sorry,
As-
there is a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
So there is a
And we're
motion on the
dealing-
floor, and it starts with that staff and it ends with Dickinson Road.
Yeah.
And so if we're calling for division, then if your council's in agreement to dividing it, you would go through them. It's up to council if you want to reverse the order, but there's
Okay,
3
so-
sections to vote on.
okay, thank you, Director Coates. So we can start with number 3. I'm fine with that. So we're just speaking to number 3 at the moment. So Councillor Gusselbreck, and it's already been moved and seconded. It's just standing alone. It's its own individual motion at this point. Obviously, the motion is not presented as such. But anyways, let's just work through it and we'll see where the discussion goes. Councillor Gusselbreck.
Okay. I think staff needs this direction because it's going to entail some survey work. From my time on council, it seems to me that a lot of the roads, it's not clear where they start and where they end. And there's surprises, as we found with Lantzville Road downtown, that I think many of the businesses were surprised where the boundaries went. So we need a survey. The problem here is that when one is leaving those particular beach ends and trying to turn onto Dickinson Road, whether you're turning left or right, you can't see. And the reason is that on those corners, and not all of them, I think most of them, that people have planted trees on their property at some time in the past. Those trees have grown and there's branches hanging over the district road right away. Sometimes those trees or hedges or bushes have actually grown into the road right away and once again impede your line of sight. We all know that people travel too fast on Dickinson Road. I actually had an accident riding my bicycle down Dickinson when somebody came out and they couldn't see me, I couldn't see them. Luckily, my son and I weren't seriously hurt. So I'm suggesting that as a safety matter, that we give staff the, give them the go-ahead to start working there. Now, it'd be nice if you could simply call the owner and say, take it down. I think we had one letter from one of the persons on Dickinson at that corner. He says, yeah, come and take down all my trees. Well, it'd be nice if he trimmed them so that we don't have to expend the money, the taxpayers' money, to do that. But I think the district has an obligation that if it's a safety issue, they go in there, send a crew and do it after making sure where the boundary is.
Okay, additional comments? I'll speak to this one real brief. This is an operational item as it's worded. It's basically telling staff what to do. So I hope if staff is driving around, especially Director of Public Works or any other member of Public Works staff, they would see this and they would tend to it. I think, you know, I'd be more comfortable with just simply seeing a report come back. It's going to require a lot of work. You know, it'll probably indicate things in there about surveying, costs, and all that stuff. But if there are any immediate safety concerns, I think it's being pointed out to staff and they should attend to it. But I think we're getting a little bit into the operational weeds of things. It simply should, if you were looking for a report, let's get a report back, let's find out and deal with that at that point. But anyways, it feels very operational. And again, if the safety concerns already being brought forward to staff, I trust that staff is doing their job and they're going to attend to that concern that's been brought forward.
Through the chair to staff.
Sorry, you're interrupting, Councillor Gusselbreck. I'm calling to, I think Councillor Savage is next. So go ahead, Councillor Savage, and then if you
I haven't finished yet.
Yeah. well,
finish what?
I haven't finished speaking.
I was just speaking. I had the floor. Okay, and then Councillor Savage has his hand up now, or had his hand up, and then I will.
Yeah. Thank you. So here's the process here. When you see a safety issue, be it a resident or a councillor, I dare say the best thing you do is you report it to the district, meaning staff. So I think it's appropriate either on an operational level to report it, or if you feel strongly about it, it's a strong safety issue to bring it up in the form of a motion so that something of prime safety concern is, you know, it's addressed. It comes to hopefully to the front of the queue. So I think either way is appropriate. So I think if any of us see a safety issue, and I would agree that having driven these often, that not only there, but there's elsewhere as well, that but since these have been drawn to our attention, that I would certainly support having them attended to in a way that's working with the property owner and for the safety of the corner. Having said that, I'm not so sure you do have to do a survey. If you have the cooperation of the property owner and say, hey, look, if we could trim this, it'll make it a lot better. Are you on board? Can you do it? Do you need help doing it? I think that's the best way to do it. That way you avoid the survey and the recourse like that. So I'd be all on board with this. So why don't we give this to staff, see if they can't tend to it just on a person-to-person level with the property owner so that these corners are safe. Ironically, it was just today, just this afternoon, I was coming out of Myron and a little Austin swerved into the other lane, not because I was out on the road, just because they saw me coming, and I had to inch right up to almost level with the road. So it does happen. So anyway, that's my point of view. Thank you.
So just before we go to you, Councilor Gusselbreck, Director Coates has her hand up. So go ahead, Director Coates, and then.
I want to confirm that the motion that's on the floor is what was formerly clause 3. Below that motion that was on the floor, there was a response to a question that had been posed at the last meeting about how would this be funded. And could it be funded with COVID restart money? So if that is the intent, it would be appropriate to make a motion to amend the motion on the floor to add the clause, for the motion that's there, that council amends the motion on the floor by adding, and further that the preceding work, including surveys, contractor, and arborist work, be funded from the remaining funding in the COVID restart grant reserve. So because you've split it into 3 motions, you need to add that to all 3 of them. And because it's not in the regular work plan to do surveys, and the current workload, except for extreme safety issues, would forego this type of work.
Okay, so Councillor Gusselbrecht, and then Councillor Proctor, and then I have a comment. So go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrecht.
So I'm making that amendment to the motion that council amends the motion on the floor, item 3, by adding, and further that the preceding work includes surveys, contractor, and arborist work be funded from the remaining funding in the COVID restart grant reserve.
Okay, that's seconded by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the amendment.
So,
Councillor Gusselbrecht.
yeah. So I'd like, through the chair to staff, I'd like staff to confirm that this particular items were brought to the attention of staff by way of photographs, written submission, and that it was staff's recommendation that it come to council to get direction from council before proceeding, and specifically direction with respect to the COVID funding.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Thank you. So I agree with Councillor Savage once again that anyone who sees a hazard, report it. I think in this case, though, because the work is a little bit more than simply putting that sign up that somebody ran down on Dickinson Road over the weekend, or cutting one bush back, this is a little more work entailed, and I think staff wants direction from us to do it. This is a serious safety issue. I can't stand back and wait till somebody gets killed. It's summer months coming up. That's why I brought it quickly. It's extremely dangerous coming up from the road ends. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Proctor.
I don't have anything to add to the discussion at this time.
Okay. For myself, I think we should just throw that amendment on the other 2 points and have staff come back with a report and be disposed of this item of 10D. It just seems like we need to have a report coming back outlining basically what's going to happen. And in the interim, if there are safety concerns, I think staff has enough information to attend to those immediate safety concerns about sight lines and so forth. But I see the amendment applying to all 3 points, and I think there's enough information there for staff to work with to bring back a meaningful report that will outline what's going to be required survey-wise, what's going to be required basically work-wise, and adding to their work order, and whether or not we need to hire out contractors and so forth. So I think for simplicity, we should just add 1, 2, and 3 together and go back to the original motion and just add in the same amendment and move on. But I see Councillor Proctor, your hand is up.
I agree with most of what's been said so far, and normally I would agree with a staff report, but I think this is a timely matter. Everyone in Lantzville wants to get to and from the beach this summer. We couldn't have a staff report until sometime in September, and beach season will be pretty much over by then. So I think that this is really timely. I think that Councillor Gesselbrock's approach to this was well thought out and conferred with staff. I agree with him that we need to make a motion asking them to remove these safety issues from the road right away so that people can get safely to and from the beach.
I see Councillor Wilson's hand up. I just had a question through to staff real quickly. Is there enough information within the motion and potentially as amended to basically complete all these works? So it'd be a direct or question through to staff.
Your worship, from Campbell, I believe it is. The motion is comprehensive enough.
As far as I'm concerned, that's good enough. I honestly don't need to see a report per se. I was just concerned about, how much expense was going to be with respect to the surveys and B-trend or all the surveys. But anyways, if staff feels confident there's enough info, I'm fine. Councillor Wilson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just, okay, we're July 21st, and I appreciate that, we're right in the middle of summer. I just don't know what with everything else that our public works staff has to deal with, and just with staff taking holidays, just what the reality is of being able to achieve all of this. To me, I agree, like any safety issues with respect to hedges or things that we can deal with immediately, for sure, let's jump all over it. Getting some feedback, so someone could just shut off their mic, that'd be awesome. But I think this is something that we put into motion now, so that we look into next year, we lay the foundation, if you will, for potentially the next council, or if not, these are projects that we initiate when we do our financial plan in December. I think the important thing is for the public and the residents to know that this is something that as council, we are being mindful of. Like, for example, just going through all these things, I do think a survey needs to happen. I mean, I do it on my property to figure out where the property line is. And I think that a survey needs to happen to first then give residents a warning that, hey, we're going to be taking back some of the space, increasing available parking spaces on Sebastian Road. We're not going to be paving separate parking stalls or building curves and putting little gravel patches along the side of the other side of Sebastian Road for parking that quickly. This is just how I'm reading this anyways. But I think any safety issues, like the hedges, needs to be taken care of immediately, because I've had that experience on turning onto some of these roads. So I do think that this is something that we need to kind of build a plan around personally. So having staff come back with a plan that they present to us in September that we can act on for the beginning of next year, I think would be great. And just to take care of the immediate, like the trimming of just trimming back of the bushes, not getting into the setbacks, just making sure that things are safe is maybe something of the immediate. But as far as everything else, we need a fulsome report from staff as to laying this all out.
Okay, so Director Coates, and then back to Councillor Gusselbrecht, but Director Coates.
I just wanted to clarify what you're voting on, because I heard some discussion going in a couple places there. So there was a main motion, which was formerly clause 3, and then there was an amendment to find the fund, the fundings through COVID. I think the amendment did get voted on.
No, it hasn't been voted on when we're discussing the amendment.
You're okay. So you're going to vote on the amendment, but then there was discussion about whether the other 2 clauses were getting added into this. And so that would need to be done separately after the amendment for the funding is dealt with.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Gusselbrecht.
Thank you. This is the most important item of this motion. I'm prepared to abandon the other 2 items. I've had discussion with Director Spears with respect to Sebastian and Venture. I think staff can stick handle around that. It's an issue of parking. I've been down to Sebastian a couple of times, and it's inconvenient. You can't park right on Sebastian, but there is parking on Venture. And with a little bit of maintenance on Peterson, there's more parking. Those aren't safety issues like item number 3. And straight roads, I think once again, staff can handle that on an operational basis. So I'd like to vote on item number 3. we're going to use COVID funding. We have money that's left over. Staff can hire an arborist to do the work. Staff can get a surveyor down there right away. I think this is the important one. So let's deal with this and let's get a vote on this. Thank you.
Okay, so I was going to speak next. I personally think all three are important, and I think staff can act on them now as they're largely operational issues. All we're really doing is giving them the green light to go ahead and spend some COVID restart funds. So I think all three can be done. I think it could probably be done quickly. A lot of it's just going to be dependent on how readily available the surveyors are and the contractors and arborists are. That's really all it is. So I'm fine with all three being acted upon and having their COVID restart money going towards that. So Councillor Savage, and I'm going to call the question at least on three, or an amendment, and then.
Yes, I called for division. We're voting we've already made the motion for number 3 and the amendment for number 3. So could we please dispose of that first?
Sure.
And there's a reason I called for division. So if we could do that first, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment to the third bullet or number there or item. All right, so all those in favor of the amendment? Okay, opposed? Okay, that's carried and unanimously. And then we're back to the main motion as amended. So we're just voting on number 3 as amended. All those in favor and opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Now we're back to 1 and 2. What would council like to do? Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I'd like to take them separately, please.
Okay, so we'll take number 1 just so we can get this done.
Hey, could you read number 1 for us, please?
So that's remove all non-conforming encroachments, including rocks on both Orr and straight roads, allowing full parking access on district road right-of-ways. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage. That's what we're discussing.
Yes, thank you. And here's the key question. Is this motion to remove all beach road end encroachments eventually, or are we just targeting select encroachments listed in this motion?
If I may, Councillor Savage, I think the intent this evening is to discuss the items that are more of a priority item, but if you want to come back with another motion dealing with other streets and whether it's this meeting or a future meeting, that's probably what's indicated.
Right, okay, well, I don't know that because the whereas part of this motion went on about the priority. It described it accurately, our priority to remove all beach road end encroachments. And it just says including, but it doesn't say, it says including, but it does not say, but not exclusive to. So that's why I'm wondering. So if it is just these, I don't agree with the process of just picking and choosing a few encroachments unless they're top safety priority. That's the point. So
Councillor Savage, are you prepared to amend the motion on the floor to strike basically Orr and straight roads?
Well, could I ask Councillor Gesselbrecht, please, what was your intent here? Is it just these and nothing else, or was it just starting with these and all encroachments?
If I have permission from the chair, my intent was all encroachments. These were two items that I'm aware of. There's a hedge down there, but as Councillor Savage is aware, there are many encroachments at the beach ends, and whether staff is going to be able to get to them this summer or later, maybe it should be on the to-do list. We still have COVID money. Let's do a general cleanup. So to answer your question, yes, all encroachments.
Right. So if I may speak to that, then please, I think what's needed here is a priority process so that staff can work methodically through perhaps the most popular beach road ends, or would be one of those, and do it methodically like that. You can't do everything at once. just my personal preference, but I just don't feel comfortable discussing a private property's encroachment publicly. I much prefer to have it dealt with quietly without embarrassing them and so on. And the real key to this problem is this, is that it's absolutely fine for, it's human nature for property owners to have privacy grow up around them, even if it's on district property. The problem now is the beach road ends are getting busier. So unfortunately, we're going to have to work it out with some of those properties on the more popular beach road ends to come up with an accommodation. And I hope it's done gently and working with the person rather than heavy-handed is the key. And I did want to mention there's a good 3 reasons why the beach road ends have become busier. First of all, with COVID, I've noticed a marked increase in activity at the beach and road ends, people getting out of their house. Social media apps are creating a lot of action problems, whatever. Sebastian Road has a number of apps, one of them advertising Sea Star Caves. And so people come there to see where they might be and so on. And the other third thing is people come to our beaches to do things they're not allowed elsewhere. And an example of that, a lady recently came from Parksville where the city told her that no, there's no off-leash places in Parksville on their beaches, but there is in Lantzville. So, and I run into a lot of Nanaimo people that come there for the very reason to have their dogs off leashes there. So I think ultimately, as well as just these encroachments and the parking, is we need an education process so people can be trained so that these beach road ends become a place of serenity, not a Yahoo, quickly fly in with the car, make noise and leave sort of thing, because that aids the property owners who live there and it aids everyone so they can feel comfortable going down there to experience nature sort of thing. And and then there are some solutions, one of which is to restrict some of the more popular road ends to perhaps just local resident traffic. So you get a permit if you're in Lantzville, you can park there. If you don't have a Lantzville permit, then you have to park on some of the other beach road ends or park in the village, a common parking lot. And it may come to that if it gets too overridden. We just don't have the infrastructure for big parks and so on. So that's my suggestion is, yes, we can start with some of these things, but I would prefer it done out of the spotlight so people aren't put in the spotlight, and we come up with a priority list of encroachments and work through them methodically, work with the property owners that are cooperative, like, hey, your rocks are here, do you mind removing them? Sure, it's done. But if it becomes more contentious than that goes on to another list. So it's not just so easy, I'm afraid, just to point at an encroachment and publicly and to say remove it. So I'd rather see a little more circumspect, broader way of doing it. But if you want to start with these, that's fine with me. Just let's do it on the staff level and not discuss the situation per se. So that's it for encroachments with me. Thank you.
Okay, so I had a couple comments then, Councillor Wilson. So basically, again, this is another, basically, in my opinion, operational issue. Really, all we need to do is give staff the green light to start spending some COVID restart monies on doing this work. So what I'm going to do is propose an amendment that we from this. So it's adding the words after encroachments at beach road ends. So the adding at beach road ends to remove all non-conforming encroachment at beach road ends. And then after the word rocks, striking on both or and straight roads. And that's my amendment. And if I have a seconder to that, I'll speak to it. So second by Councillor Gesselbruck. So the reason for this is, again, it gives the direction to staff to do the work. It's not singling out any one beach road end. I'm sure they can make short work of this. And if we're bringing surveyors in, why not just send them out and do all the beach road ends, the ones that need to be done that we don't have any recent survey data on, and then get cracking. If we're bringing in a contractor to do one thing, might as well get them in to do a lot of things. Makes sense, and we've got the money in the budget to do it. So that's the amendment. That's the reason for it. I can't even remember who seconded it, but so Councillor Proctor, and then we'll move forward.
I think that's a great amendment. I fully support this idea. I've sat on several committees where this has been discussed. The Parks and Trails Commission and the Economic Development Committee both discussed making the beach road ends more user-friendly, and also advertising that we have more than one beach road end so that it sort of spreads out the wealth of the visitors to all the beach road ends. I fully support this. I think the encroachments need to be removed so that people can park and access the public beaches. And I know there's lots of support for it because I've heard support on all the committees I've sat on for the district.
And Councillor Wilson, you've had your hand up patiently, and then Councillor Gelsenbach. And is speaking more to the amendment than anything, but go ahead.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think when you think about the word contentious, it's definitely, I've had residents come to me with respect to the lack of parking. So I think that I totally can support all the beach road ends in this case, so that we can, for the summer of 2022, that we can improve the parking on our beach road ends. The other thing, just as a point of clarification that Councillor Savage mentioned, and I always thought that people did have to have their dogs on a leash on our beaches, but I guess they don't, because I've had a few annoying experiences myself, and I just thought that they were violating a bylaw, but that's something to be looked at, because I myself have stepped in what I wish I didn't step in, just going swimming at the beach from a random dog that I saw do it 5 minutes before. So anyways, that's all.
Yeah, Councillor Gelsenbach.
Yes, I was wondering if the chair wanted to continue with his amendment to include the COVID amendment below and include that in your amendment altogether.
Okay, so I was thinking that as well. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and I guess we can do two amendments. So the amendment then would be, and further that the preceding work, including survey, contractor, arborist work, be funded from the remaining funding in the COVID restart grant reserve. So to add the seconder to that, second by Councillor Gelsenbach. So really at this point, unless there's new information, we'll vote on the amendment to the amendment. So all those in favor? Okay, that's carried. And then we're back to the amendment. So again, call the question on the amendment because we just amended that. So all those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Now we're back to the main motion as amended, and this is just number 1. So unless there's new information, I'm inclined to call the question on this item. So Councillor Gelsenbach, or sorry, Councillor Proctor. Is there, okay, you're ready to vote. All right, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Now we're on to number 2. So that's already moved. So again, I'll just make the amendment to that one. So I amend the motion on the floor, and this is number 2. So this is the increased parking spaces on Sebastian and so forth. So the amendment is that the motion on the floor be amended by including surveys, contractor, arborist work through the COVID restart, and the amendment motion. Oh, sorry, there we go. That's all we need to do to fund it. So we have that amended, seconded by Councillor Proctor. So back to the amendment. Any discussion on that? So really, it's just the funding piece. So we'd be debating that. So seeing nothing, I'm going to call the question on amendment. All those in favor? Okay, it's carried unanimously. Now we're on to, again, we're back to the main motion as amended. Any further comment, debate on that? Okay, Councillor, are we ready to vote, or Councillor Proctor comment? Okay,
This time I had a comment. Thank you.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I do think it's important to clarify this because, I'm sorry. Venture isn't really a beach road end, but it's really close to the Sebastian Beach Road end. So it would be, there's a lot of parking spots that could be identified along there, and it's a very short walk to the Sebastian Beach Road end. And the same with the end of Peterson. During our heat dome, when I was down there, I did see cars parking at the end of Peterson and along Venture, and it's a very short walk to the Sebastian Road. So I think it's good that we clarify those two spots. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So unless there's any further comment debate, I'm going to call the question on the motion as amended. So Councillor Savage, did you have a comment? Go ahead.
We are discussing the Sebastian motion now.
This is number 2. So this is increase the parking spaces on Sebastian and so on.
Oh, yes, this deserves a good thorough looking at here. So the problem simply is the new Sebastian Road design does not meet its needs, which are specifically its parking needs. And I did make a number of motions back in that December of 2020 to improve the parking and so on. However, we are with the road we are now, but I certainly support this motion to find more parking spots on the road. One problem is that the road was put lower than the old road. Therefore, it has stranded some of the west side properties well above the road, so it's not a flat level to enter those properties. It's about 4 feet of shoulder, then a very narrow, steepish ditch to accommodate the water. Therefore, cars are sticking out on the road. Cars are also sticking out on the road by the railing there where there's nowhere near enough room. So all this has to be solved by getting more parking there. And there's now 0 parking on Sebastian from the beach road end to approximately 460 feet back from the road end, where there's a pullout with 1 parking spot. So this has to be addressed. It can be addressed with parking, which I brought up before, around the lift station. The lift station is protected with a metal fence. It's not going to hurt it at all. The most damage might be a few $100s to the fence. And also we had a motion March 21st. I don't know what happened to that motion to move the barricades. And now we're looking at that once again in terms of some parking there. I would view that as a temporary solution until we can ultimately look at overall the road end. Do we want some green space there mixed with parking? Do we want just parking? Do we want all green space? This has to be decided at a public process, which we've discussed before, exactly what is the best use there. But there's a ton of no parking signs there that I don't think are necessary, which can alleviate some of the parking. The cement barrier literally does not work now. I've seen more confusion there, even a UPS truck, and they're all, many of them are turning around in poor Mike Thomas's driveway because all it takes is just 1 car parked there. And that's seen that many times. And they've blocked the Hammerhead turnaround there. So I'm wondering if it might not be better to have a turnaround where the lift station is, to get more parking in that lift station and to clear out some more places on the west side there to extend the road a bit so it can be more safely parked upon. And I don't think it's an answer to shift a lot of the parking up to Venture. Those are people that haven't had a lot of this before. That's not fair to them. And it's also not fair to Harper Road because a lot of this displaced Sebastian traffic is now going to Harper Road. I've never seen it like it was this summer on that weekend where we had the hot spell. there was 24 cars on Sebastian parked and 23 on Harper. So almost equal. That's a load of cars. And that's at 4 p.m. That's just one snapshot in time. And then on the Monday, which is a weekday at 3 p.m., there was 19 on Harper and 14 on Sebastian, even more on Harper. So this is displacing cars. It's causing a ripple effect. So I really think we need to create all the parking we can on Harper and change the shoulder design. We're not going to change the road design, but change some of the shoulder design. And as I said before, maybe have on Sebastian just local parking. And that would alleviate it, because we're also trying to think of people that live there. We don't want to inundate them with cars all the time, especially night traffic and people that aren't behaving that well. So it's too bad, but we have to limit some of our areas with our infrastructure. So that's another possibility there. So I think there's a lot into that, but I think this is one where really a report might need doing. And through chair to staff, is there a reason why we're still waiting for that March 21st motion to remove the barricades to allow parking? That was a few months ago now.
Your worship, through you to council, unfortunately, Director Spears was not able to join tonight. So I'll get that answered to Councillor Savage tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, because I'm all for quick solutions, even if it's just to get us through this summer.
And sorry,
yeah.
I
Yep.
have my hand up.
Yep.
I just wanted to add to what the CAO was saying, that it has, if council would refer to the council resolutions list, it was distributed with the last council agenda. The motion was not to move the barriers. The motion was for staff to provide a report on moving the barriers at the end of Sebastian Road as close as possible to the beach to allow for additional parking. So staff do have it on their work list to bring back a report. And that was March 31st motion. Thanks.
That's right. You're right. It was a report. You're absolutely right. Thank you. So anyway, I see nothing wrong with a temporary solution. And I know that the one property owner at the end there is anxious for a better solution. So if I'm certainly willing to work with both owners at the end to make sure that they're looked after as well, but just temporarily, I don't see anything wrong with getting some parking at the end there, and then looking for a more long-term solution when things cool off over the winter months. So we can look at an overall plan as the best way to do it, and to also look into this idea of locals only parking might help, and it might alleviate the owners there as well. Those are some of my thoughts, but I think it needs a report looking into. In the meantime, I'd like to see the parking open up as fast as possible. It's getting on August here, so thank you.
So Councillor Proctor, you're next on the speakers list.
Thank you. I agree. I think that we should look into the possibility of having resident parking. I know in a lot of the beach areas in Vancouver, it's impossible to park unless you live if you live in Kitsilano, you can park at Kitsilano Beach. If you don't, it's pretty hard. And I think that given the fact that these aren't public parks, they're just beach road ends, that it might be worthwhile for us to look into that. It would be a benefit to Lantzville citizens. What the March 22nd motion was asking for was a staff report. So I didn't think that this motion would mention the barricades at all, because we're waiting for a staff report on the barricades. My understanding was we're talking about removing the encroachments on Venture and the northerly end of Peterson Road to allow for more parking simply. And we were waiting for the staff report. And I could support that. I don't support moving any barricades or changing the design of Sebastian Road without a staff report, a fulsome staff report.
Okay, and it's just for myself real brief. Again, this is just speaking to what's in the motion, right? So if anything, it's going to come back with respect to the end of Sebastian Road or the Beach Road end and reconfiguring that in whatever way that would be requiring a separate motion anyways, and we'll have to wait for the staff report. So, okay, I'm going to move to calling or through to Director Coates. Did we vote on the amendment? I think we did. I'm just starting to blend here. And I can't hear you.
Sorry. I don't think I had my mute still on. To amend.
Number
no,
2, just for the funding.
The number 2, I do not, so that's clause 2, motion 3, moved and seconded to amend. Yeah, I've got carried unanimous on the amendment.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so unless there's new information, I'm going to call the question on number 2 as amended. And the amendment is essentially the funding piece from COVID. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Or hold on, any opposed? Okay, no, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that disposes of 10D. Now we're on to 10E, which is the Council Strategic Priority 2021-2023 Parks and Recreation, item 5.3 Foothills Park for council direction. There's some background information included. There's a recommendation, so I'll just make the recommendation that council refers Foothill Park to the next District of Lantzville and Sanawa's First Nation Joint Council meeting. Do I have a seconder to that? Okay, second by Councillor Savage. Discussion on the motion. So I'll just kind of talk about this real briefly. So this was, as it says in background information, on the bottom of page 3 of our agenda. So this was basically came out of the joint council, or sorry, the joint working group meeting. And the discussion came in and so on. But at this point, I've talked to staff, and this is the recommendation that I've asked for, is that it just be referred to our next joint council meeting. Since then, I have spoken to Councillor Edwards about it, and this is probably the best place for it, to see if there's anything that Sanawa's First Nations have input on with respect to the foothill, considering it's in their traditional territory. So that's it. So it's just a simple motion to bring this discussion item forward to our next joint council meeting. So as a seconder, Councillor Savage, anything to add? Okay, and then speakers list. So Councillor Gesselbrecht, go ahead.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Firstly, is there a Sanawa's council resolution asking for this?
Through to staff, I can't recall off the top of my head if there's anything that came out of the joint working group meeting. So through to staff.
So for clarity, the joint working group is district staff, 3 district staff meeting with 2 staff and their staff, quasi-staff / counselor representing the Snout-Noas. It was a member from the Snout-Noas that asked to have discussion at the next joint working group about the park. So district staff felt that we should bring that back to council for referral. So it was not a request from the Snout-Noas Council. It was a request from one of their representatives for the joint working group to discuss it. But as council themselves have not discussed, other than preparing the strategic plan and identifying in the strategic plan that the regional, that the Foothills Park be a regional park and consider other options for partnerships for components. That was the only thing council has discussed so far. And currently on our strategic plan, it shows that the other options still require council direction. So for staff attending, representing the district on the joint working group, we would feel more comfortable if council had turned their mind to this first. So it's likely council would have a discussion of it at a meeting and then if this motion passes, then you would discuss it with the Snout-Noas Council.
Yeah.
So the answer is no. And that's one concern that I have, that in terms of protocol, there hasn't been a council to council request. My second concern is that I think this is premature to have anybody discussing it before our staff has an application for the comprehensive development of the foothills properties, which presumably will identify what will be the park, how many acres. So my question through the staff, do we have that application? Do we know what will be the boundaries of the park at this point?
Perhaps Director Young could answer that.
Through the mayor to Councilor Gesselbrock, no, we don't have an application, and no, we don't know what the boundaries of the park will be.
Okay. So on both those counts, I think it's premature. It may be a good idea. I don't know why Snout-Noas would want to enter in on what would be a park of Lantzville and may ultimately be administered by the RDN, but that's speculation right now. So my thoughts would be to postpone this recommendation to a later date. I don't think anybody knows when we'll see the application from the foothills and what will be the staff response. But until that's done, I suggest that we postpone this item to the November, let's see. The second meeting in November would be November 17th. And if something comes up before that, or there's a request by the Snout-Noas Council to deal with this, or we can bring it forward. So that's my motion to postpone this motion to November the 15th.
And seconded by Councilor Proctor. Okay. So discussion on the reason why is fair game, and we got the time and date that can be.
And sorry, it was the 17th, right? November 17th.
Whatever that meeting is.
That's correct. I've stated my reasons.
Okay, so Councilor Proctor as the seconder.
I agree with everything, all the concerns that Councilor Gesselbrock have. I think that we need to have our agreement with Foothills in place and maybe some conversations with council. We haven't discussed this parkland at all before we sort of take it to share with our neighbors, which I think would probably be appropriate, but not at this time.
Okay, I'll speak to it next. In terms of the motion itself, it just refers the topic really of the Foothills Park to the next discussion or meeting we have with Snout-Noas First Nation. At this point, that is looking like it would be October 8th. That would give our council enough time to have a discussion about what's listed in our agenda. So basically, with respect to providing some additional direction regarding the Foothills Park or having discussions, I see there being no harm in having a discussion about if there's any interest in the Foothills Park. We already have a chunk allocated to the district in the neighborhood of, 731 acres, I believe, has been transferred to the district already. So we have parkland already. We just don't have it all. So at this point, I think we can have a discussion. I don't see why we wouldn't, rather than waiting until the end. It doesn't make any sense. And we may want to consider whatever input Snout-Noas First Nation that chief and council would have with respect to the future parkland, considering it is in their traditional territory. So I'll be supporting, or I will not be voting in favor of the postponement motion for those reasons. So we have Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. May I have it clarified, please, what our dates here? The motion just simply says to the next District of Lantzville and Stanawas meeting. And that date, the very next one is October, isn't it?
Well, the next one would be October 8th, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong in that.
Yep. So
I don't believe we've heard a response back. We've suggested that date, but it's just been suggested. So
Yeah.
we're waiting for a response so that, because we need to include the date in the grant application. That's why we're inquiring.
yeah, so I see nothing wrong with just bringing it up. During the meeting, we can choose to refer it to a later date if it's not timely. So there's nothing preventing us from doing anything at the meeting, but just to hear what's up, what some of the permutations are, what some of the possibilities are. Nothing wrong with that without any decisions being made, or as I say, we can refer or defer it, postpone it to any future date we like. So this is simply hearing a request to hear it. That's all. There's nothing wrong with listening. So I prefer it at the next meeting myself. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna, Councillor Gusbrecht, and again, just speaking to the postponement, why and dates. So go ahead. You're on mute.
Did you mean to say Councillor Gusbrecht or Councillor Wilson?
Oh, I meant Councillor Gusselbrecht.
I just have had my hand up for quite a while and maybe you haven't seen, but I'd like to speak because I think Councillor Gusselbrecht has already spoken.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
I mean, I think fundamentally I can support this because I'm ultimately game. I think it's good just to have good communication with Stanawas, even if we are speaking about some things that might be hypotheticals at this point. But I do have a question through to Director Young. Is there any indication as to when the next phases are going to be finalized? Are we looking at years down the road before this park is even finalized? Like, is there a timeline on that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, I believe, and I could be correct here, but I believe in the memorandum of understanding we have with Lone Tree, the expectation is that there's a large hole in the parkland that we have now that is intended to be development. And the idea is that at the signing of the PDA, so fairly soon in the near future, that piece of parkland would be consolidated with the rest. And then further phases of the parkland would happen over many years and decades, perhaps. But the bulk of the parkland, approximately 900 acres, we would have that at the signing of the PDA.
Which from a timeline would approximately be, like you said, fairly soon?
Likely in the next 6 months.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't see an issue with having that being a part of our meeting. It's somewhat how I feel with a good neighbor bylaw now that we've kind of brought it back to second reading, and we're not, until it's actually done, in referring it to them for comment, it's not, I don't know if it's really, I mean, are we wasting people's time? But I mean, as far as speaking about the next meeting openly with them, I have no issue including them. So I'll support the motion. But I do appreciate the sentiments of having something that's, like what are we talking about here with respect to the geographical layout, if you will, of the park. But yeah, sure, I'll support the motion.
Okay, so I'm prepared to call the motion on the postponement, which would be to whatever, November 17th. So that would be the postponement motion, or it's just referred. So voting against it means it would just go to the next joint council meeting. So voting in favor means we go likely beyond that. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the postponement motion? And opposed, and Mayor Swain's opposed, Councillor Gusselbrecht, Councillor Savage, Councillor Wilson opposed. So the postponement fails. So we're back to the main motion, which is again, I think we've had lots of debate. I don't know if there's any new information to put forward on it. Okay, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor and opposed? So noting that Councillor Gusselbrecht is opposed, the motion carries. All right, so we're on to item F. So this is just for information, potential public art installment to be located in the road right away at 7221 Lantzville Road. It's really what does council want to do? Actually lost my other screen. So go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I would like to see us go ahead with this. Completely the original village improvement plan, which also was inserted into our OCP, called upon the idea of placemaking, which is simply grassroots involvement. It allows people to invest in their downtown. It allows them to feel ownership and pride that they were involved in it. And on top of that, it was mentioned as well in the village improvement plan, this idea of artisans. We have so many in Lantzville, and you want unique artisan character things in a community to make it innovative and unique. You don't want just another bland street scene that's in every other city. It's just like anywhere, right? It doesn't give you the draw for people. If the objective here is to have an interesting, colorful, artistic town that people are drawn to, if that's your goal, to bring a little more business for businesses, be it the pub or coffee shops, whatever, then have it interesting. And here we've got something that's presented to us that's interesting. And we have tons of artisans that would be interested in designing something there. And then someone's picked to design it, and those that also contributed maybe can help with the volunteer. It can be done very expensively and can be done in that mode. It's a perfect spot for it. So I think it should be full steam ahead, and let's get the grassroots involved to see how nice a thing it can be. It can be done with very limited budget as well, these artisan things where you have donated labor and so on. So for me, it's full steam ahead to be a lovely attraction there. It's just been a dead garden for so long now. Those are where the old gas pumps used to be, where the garden is, by an old store that used to be there, which hasn't been there a long time. So it would be nice to beautify it, fix it up, make it artistic, and get the public involved. So I'm all for it, moving ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so I see that Councillor Proctor, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think that it would be great if staff brought something forward during our budgeting process to look at this. I agree with Councillor Savage. I think it would be great if we asked for submissions, similar to the way we had the mural completed downtown. We had people filled out a proposal, submitted their proposal. The economic development officer at the time was the one that picked the mural that we went ahead with. But there are, we do have a lot of artists in Lantzville, and we could probably get some interesting proposals. I'd like to see staff bring something forward for us to consider in our budget considerations this fall, as was the recommendation in the staff report.
Okay, additional speakers to this item? I said a brief comment. If I'm reading this correctly in the staff report, basically there's already $2,500 in the 2021 budget for small scale beautification projects. Is that $2,500 still available through to staff?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, the way I see this at this point is I don't see why we wouldn't just call for, like, do a request for proposals, and that money that's there, that $2,500 would go towards creating some kind of site prep base for which this public art installment would be placed upon or fastened to or what have you. But I'd say why not go ahead now with a request for proposals to see what kind of things that we could get coming forward to us. So we have something for September 8th council meeting. Makes sense to me. There's no need to delay this any further. We have the money there. So I think staff knows how tall our installment can be, like the maximum height. They know the dimensions of that dirt pile, weed patch right now in front of the building. They know the dimensions of that. So it'd be interesting to have some proposals come back for our September 8th or even for their next meeting in September, and let's vote on it, and or we could do some kind of poll or what have you to see what the community would like to see go there. But I think we do have a lot of artisans in Lantzville, and we could probably get something really cool, and a lot of it's going to probably be in-kind donation for materials and so forth, but depending on the site prep and what we need to do to basically prepare that land and fasten whatever needs to be installed there so it doesn't get picked up and thrown into a truck and taken away. There's probably going to be some expense to that. So again, right now it's just there's just something for information, and there's no motion on the floor per se, but I would say let's go ahead and do a request for proposals for that for consideration, and maybe September. I think it would be the second meeting in September, whatever that date would be. So I see Councillor Wilson, your hand went up, and then Councillor Gusselbrecht, and then Councillor Proctor.
Just hoping for clarification when the district says they'll be submitting a new grant application under a different program for the same project.
So through to staff.
And just to elaborate on that, do we know when you'll be submitting that new grant application? And what the turnaround of that grant application would be?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Wilson. So this is for phase 2 of the streetscape improvements from Dickinson Road to Tweed Hope Road. So we submitted a previous grant application for that project. We were denied. We were advised that we were unsuccessful in that grant application in February of this year. And Council recently authorized a new grant application under a different grant program. We submitted that grant application today. We don't have any indication as to when we're going to hear back about that grant.
Okay. As far as this, yeah, I think it'd be cool to put call it a home touch, if you will, on this, and there is no harm in having people submit ideas. And I do think though that it'll be more than $2,500. Paint, for example, is we painted the murals last year. That was something that came in, I believe, under budget, and paint is generally an inexpensive way to beautify something. I just think that as a council, we need to be prepared for hopefully getting community donations or community contribution. And yeah, can welcome definitely ideas from the public. I think that's a good idea.
So I think I had Councillor Gusselbrecht and then back to Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, I have no idea what type of art you're talking about. Frank Ney bronze statue like down at Swayalana. But I think what I've heard is that we'd like to have the public weigh in, have this idea percolate. My suggestion is that staff put this information into our next newsletter that goes out to the public, and ask the public to weigh in one way or the other what they would like to see there, and see what the recommendations are, because until you decide what type of art you're going to put there, then that decides the bucks that you're going to need to build that. So that's my recommendation.
Okay, and then through to Councillor Proctor.
I am of two minds about this. I think that we need to get some artistic ideas. I know I've spoken to a few different artists about what they would envision there, and it was totally different than what I had in mind, and really very creative. So I think that asking for artists to submit what they could envision there would be enlightening to all of us. And I'm also wondering, I have a question through you, Mayor, to Director Young. I know we were successful in getting some grant money, and we have an economic development officer that's working with the district right now. Would this sort of proposal be something that Andrew could put together for us the way he did with the murals?
Yes.
So, and he did a really good job on that he did an excellent job on that call for mural submissions. So I think that asking Andrew to look after that, I just don't know if in my mind we should put a $2,500 limit, or if we should say what, I don't know. I wonder what other council thinks. Like a $2,500 limit limits people's creativity, but then on the other hand, we don't really want proposals for a $50,000 piece of artwork in the middle of that parking lot. So I'm kind of stuck there, but I know that Andrew did an excellent job with those mural submissions and with the proposals and the, I forget what you call the documents he put together. So I would be in full support of a motion of that sort. I'm just not sure what monetary amount we want to put on it.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up comment myself, and then we can come back to Councillor Wilson and Councillor Savage. You know, for myself, the monetary piece, I understand the concern there. To me, what would make sense is that the district has available $2,500 worth of funds. If someone is prepared in their community to come forward and you know, do whatever art installment and carry the rest of the costs on their own, then so be it. I'd welcome that. You know, again, that might be just the, you know, generosity of someone coming forward and doing the in-kind part of it. But, you know, again, making it known that we have up to $2,500 to go towards that, and we'd be doing whatever proposals would come forward. And ultimately, we would have to choose, and that may not be an easy decision, but again, we'd have to, I think, just putting it out there that we have up to $2,500 to contribute to it. Let's see what proposals roll in. We may choose one, we may choose none. Who knows? We may even have a couple shelf ready for that later date. I know through the Island Economic Trust, they had there's a grant program, and I can get more details on it, but it has to do specifically with this. But you have to have shelf ready plans in order to really be successful. So in the grant application, but process. Anyways, Councillor Wilson, I think Councillor Savage.
Just out of curiosity, is this something that I know we have $2,500 available now. I personally view this project as a little bit more than $2,500. Is this something that where we would potentially, like this would be something that would happen in 2022, I would think. So is it logical to think that there potentially could be more money that would go towards the project? Do we maybe give a bit of a window or a range to say between $2,500 and $5,000?
I'll answer that, you know, and then if staff wants to weigh in, they can do it too. But ultimately, you know, we do have surplus monies that we can spend. Even with Minetown Day this year, even if it does go ahead, it's probably going to be a modified Minetown Day, so there's probably going to be monies left over from that. You know, there's money available. It's really up to council how much money we want to spend. And you know, if council wants to authorize 5,000 and we fund it out of the rest of it out of surplus, then so be it. And correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but I believe we have the authority to do that. So maybe through to you know, through our new director of finance or CEO Campbell. Can we not take money out of surplus to make up the shortfall, or if council wants to increase the budget to 5,000 or 10,000, then do it that way?
Your worship, through you to you and to council, certainly you can.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So money is really not an object. It's you know, we do want to be responsible to our taxpayers, but if you know, council feels that, well, maybe we increase the budget to $10,000 and we see what comes in, I think this is a real opportunity to have something like a real focal point in our village core to add to the other improvements. So again, it's the will of council. We'll decide how we go about this. So I don't know if there's any additional. Councillor Proctor, did you have, or I can't remember now, speakers list. Oh, I think it was Councillor Savage actually. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I think you just pick your price and set it at that. And yes, you could build leeway in if something really thought they had something magnificent. But don't forget, this is a real honor for an artisan displaying their work. So if they have to kick in a bit, believe me, they will. A lot of artisans will. So I would make the motion. If you would, please, Mayor Swain, you've been talking about.
Go ahead, make the motion.
No, you make the motion, please.
Well, I didn't really have anything quite prepared, so if you have something off the cuff, you're more than welcome.
All right, well, I'll just make the motion that that staff be instructed to move ahead with an art installment in the road right of way at 7221 Lantzville Road. And I would leave it at that. And they've heard everything we've discussed. I think that's enough. They heard, they got the idea that it's going to be sent out for requests and that sort of thing. So if Trudy wants to doll that up with what she needs, then that's the basis of it. So if you want to get it, Director.
So let's go to the Director Coates, and I've got you down as a speaker, Councillor Proctor.
And I was going to actually defer to Director Hare, because usually if we're getting authorization to do something, we already have funding in the budget. And if we don't have funding in the budget, then we get some kind of an authorization from council for a certain amount of money. And then the motion includes a motion to amend the financial plan. But maybe perhaps Director Hare could speak to that.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Yes, I believe it would be appropriate for council to direct staff to amend the financial plan for the amount of funding that they would like set aside for this initiative.
Okay, so Councillor Savage, is that your complete motion, or do you want to add some wording to it?
Yes, I would include the range 2,500 to 5,000 to satisfy both ends of that. That way it doesn't have to be 5,000. They can send it in that range. And I would just refer to it as an art installation, leave it up to the artisans to decide what might look good there. And then I'd leave it up to staff to give all the particulars, the dimensions of the garden.
So we got a motion, just let's get it seconded. So if I hear it correctly, is that staff be instructed to do an art installment at the address listed, and further that the financial plan be amended to, well, actually you didn't amend it, just to approve a budget of $2,500 to $5,000. So I'll second that. Discussion on the motion. Is there anything to add, Councillor Savage?
Before, Your Worship, just in what you just said in the motion that staff provide a art for that section, were you actually saying that we go out for a proposal call?
Well, I was going to amend the motion further, CEO Campbell, but I was just opening it to council for discussion. So I was just letting the mover speak to it first, and then as the seconder, I already have an amendment, and then we go to the speakers list. And I know I've got Councillor Proctor on the speakers list, so, but it's just the way it goes when we have motions on the fly here. So, and then I have Councillor Wilson after Councillor Proctor. So Councillor Savage, is there anything to further add to your motion, like discussion debate wise, or in proposed amendments?
Well, no, I made it there on purpose so that staff could fill in what they need. That's all. So we've got the amendment of the financial plan for $25,000 to $5,000, and that Andrew, our economic development officer, be instructed to organize and send out requests for proposals from artisans. Basically, is what we're trying to say.
Okay, So as a seconder, I'll just speak briefly to it. I don't think staff probably has enough direction on this based on CEO Campbell's comment. So I'm just going to make the amendment and further that staff call for request for proposal for staff or for council consideration at the September, whatever the second meeting date is. That would be the 22nd, is it? September 22nd, or I can't remember what the second meeting date of September is.
Yes, that's correct. September
Through that
22nd.
for September 10th, September 22nd. So that's the amendment. So do I have a seconder to the amendment? Okay, seconded by Councillor Savage. I think the amendment's pretty straightforward. Just gives staff, is that now enough direction through to staff with respect to the motion? If we have this amendment in, or is further direction?
I believe so, Your Worship.
Okay, that's what I figured. Okay, so speaking to the amendment, I have nothing really to add except for it just gives staff the instruction to call for proposals from the community. So however they do that, I'll leave it to their liking. To the seconder, any discussion on the amendment? No, and then through to the rest of council, any discussion on the amendment? And this is just calling for the proposal. Okay, Councillor Wilson, or okay, just again speaking. Okay, Councillor Proctor, and this is just speaking to the proposal.
Speaking to the amendment, I think that it would be in our better interest to have asked for staff to bring their call for submissions to the first September meeting so we can look at that. When I was on the Economic Development Committee, we reviewed that. And the reason we did is because Andrew outlined the criteria which we were going to use to pick the winning mural design. So we kind of, if we don't outline for the artists what the criteria we're going to choose them, we're going to be muddied in, we're going to be setting ourselves up for being criticized for how we choose. We need to have a criteria developed for how do we want it to depict local history? Do we want it to blend in with the streetscape? Like there's certain things that we're going to want to look for in the art installation to pick. We can't just look at the submissions and then decide what our criteria are. We need to have the criteria first. I guess it's the teacher in me speaking. So I think that if we ask staff to put together a call for submissions and we agreed on the call to submissions, that it could go out after we reviewed it. Because I do think that that is a really important aspect. And if I was the one putting together the call for submissions, I would kind of want that direction. Those are my thoughts.
So, Director Young, I see your hand up.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Proctor asked the question that I was going to ask. So just to seek some clarification, are we bringing a draft call for submissions forward to council, or are we issuing the call for submissions and then bringing those submissions back to council? And secondly, who's deciding on which submission is selected? Is it staff or is it council?
I think these are all fair questions. I just, to me, it's I think council's job here is just to essentially approve the budget and approve the the project and give that basic direction. I think staff can then take it from there. So I think staff is capable of going, okay, we're asking for proposals to come in for an art installation. Well, we have a lot of information already in place about what we'd be trying to look at in terms of the theme and fitting into our village streetscape and so forth, and the historical aspect of Lantzville. So I would just assume that would go in there. I don't think it's necessarily in council's purview to say, okay, it's got to be all these different steps. That's getting way into the weeds. It's getting into their operational aspect of things. I think there's enough talent on staff and we've got our economic development person now at our disposal I think there's enough resources, and we've kind of gone through this exercise already. So That's just my view. And then it would come back to, you know, if you need someone to, I think council will ultimately choose this one because there's going to be probably some budgetary considerations there. Because if we get a really great proposal coming to us and let's just say it's $10,000, we may be like, you know, that's great. Like it's a great proposal. Let's just fund that out of surplus and it'll be a tremendous addition to the village core. But I see everything between now and September, whether it's 8th or 22nd, that's staff can do. I don't think council needs to really be involved at any step of the way, except for, okay, you bring us, if hopefully we are successful and we have some proposals, because you never know, maybe nobody will come forward. That's always a possibility. But hopefully by September, whatever day, we would have a bunch of proposals to look at and we would pick and choose one. It's that simple in my eyes. So Councillor Wilson, and then likely call the question here pretty quick.
Just through mayor to staff, is this something that, you know, local businesses, I mean, maybe not necessarily contributing with doing the work, but they would be maybe called upon to help sponsor a project like this combined with district funds just to get a simple recognition at the end or no recognition, just to see something amazing happen there. Because I think this is something we want to hit a home run on. I agree with all the speakers, what everybody said here with parameters and everything like that. I do think we're going to be shy on the budget between $2,500 and $5,000. I think that needs to be a little bit more open-ended, just to say, hey, we're willing to entertain proposals over and above that idea. And also too, like, what about residents writing in for what they would like to see there? There could be some super cool ideas from residents writing in letters to the district. I don't know how we kind of pull all those together, but you know, that's a possibility as well. Somebody that just has a creative mind, they don't know how to actually build the structure or you know, sorry, getting a lot of feedback. So, but that's just me spitballing there to maybe make it a little bit more open-ended with the motion with respect to the cost, because I think we're going to be surprised, and to encourage residents to bring us feedback on what they would like to see there.
Okay, so I'm likely going to call the question. Does everybody understand what we're voting on? And again, I'm running out of steam here, so I believe, have we voted on the amendment for the budget piece through to Director Coates? I don't think we have.
Right now, I show the motion as that staff be instructed to move ahead with an art installment to be located in the road right-of-way at 7221 Lantzville Road, and the amendment of the financial plan in the range of $2,500 to $5,000, and further that staff issue a proposal call to artisans for consideration at the September 22nd, 2021 council meeting.
So I think we're just dealing with the amendment, which was the
and further that.
Yeah, and the further that. So really through to council, what date? It's really about the date. Do we keep it at the 22nd or the 8th? I've heard the 8th. I don't know if we're in agreement on that, or do we just keep it at the 22nd? And my thought on the 22nd is it just allows that much more time. So it gives a good 7 weeks-ish or 8 weeks almost or probably 8 weeks. Yeah. So for us to get some submissions in there, and it'll give time for the district to advertise it as they see fit. So, okay. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment? Okay, and opposed? Okay, Councillor Gesselbrecht, Councillor Wilson opposed. Now we're back to the main motion as amended. I'm going to call the question on that. All those in favor and opposed? And noting that Councillor Gesselbrecht is opposed, it carries. All right, getting there. So we're on to item 12, of our agenda. So 12A, so mayor and council verbal updates. We'll start at the bottom there on my screen. That's Councillor Proctor.
I have no update this week.
Okay, and then moving to Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I would like to mention Bev Delure, who just passed away last week. She was co-owner of Lantzville's own independent diesel business in our industrial park. She ran the Lantzville office there for many, many years, and many of the workers will fondly remember her. This business is now Peterbilt, and a number of Lantzville residents work there, raising their families in Lantzville. So it's good to honor someone who was a piece of Lantzville history and part of the island's trucking industry. Thank you.
Okay, and up to Councillor Gesselbrock.
I just want to thank all the contractors and workers who have contributed to that amazing streetscape that we now have on Lantzville Road. What I've seen far exceeds even my expectations of what was going to happen down there. Placement of trees, the grasses, the logs, absolutely incredible. A special shout out to Island Paving, who put in the tile work, the brickwork in various locations. A local contractor using local people to do that. It's just absolutely quite stunning. I have not heard a bad word said. In fact, just the opposite, that this is a turning point for downtown Lantzville. It's gorgeous. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to, get people out there. I think some benches still need to go in, but 2 thumbs up to everybody involved with this project.
Okay, and through to Councillor Wilson.
Nothing more to add.
And for myself, nothing significant here, except for it looks like the Minetown Day committee, well, that's not really a committee, but some of the committee members, it has reconvened. There's the possibility that of a Minetown Day or some form of it, but yeah, so we'll see where that all goes, and hopefully we'll have some communications coming out on that at some point in the near future. So so we'll see what happens and what we can pull together in terms of possibly hosting some form of a Minetown Day for 2021. So I'm optimistic that something will get pulled together, but it's a bit of wait and see. And if there's anybody listening this evening and so forth, it's we need to, hopefully pull in some more volunteers to spread the work around and make it easier and have a successful event. So that's my update for this evening. So moving on, we have item 13, introduction of late items. Any late items to introduce? Okay, hearing none, moving on to notices of motion. Okay, and other than that, we have made it through our agenda, so I declare this meeting adjourned. Good night.